Hi guys, and welcome to Boomer Live once again. And obviously, as we promised you, we're back with footballing action. Now, we all missed out footballing action, Boomer 11. We heard you, and we are here live talking about the most exciting footballing action. It is Manchester City taking on Liverpool in the Premier League. Now, I'll hand over to Jaren to start off because I've been so used to talking as a host, but I forgot to switch the roles. Yeah, Jaren, take over.
Yeah. Yeah, when it usually comes to football, it's me who does the initial talking and Abel who does most of the talking. But you know how it is. Abel likes the sound of his own voice, which is a good thing. He does sound good. But let's talk about football. It has been something that we've not covered for a while, and I think cricket World Cup is obviously just a little bit taken away our attention. But now that we have been disappointed and bruised and hurt, I think we're looking at a different sport where it doesn't really matter because I mean, India is not in the Premier League, luckily for us. But yeah,
What
having
do you mean
said
it
that,
doesn't matter?
any very
That's such
interesting
a
one.
rude way to start.
No, I'm saying it doesn't matter because India is not in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So it's a neutral thing. At
Yeah.
least for
Okay.
me, it is.
Okay.
And don't take it rudely. Come on. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just talking about today's match. I mean, it's going to be one of the, it's always been in the past few years a clash which has really been mouth-watering. Is Liverpool versus Man City, and I mean, they are two teams which somewhat are back with that rivalry in the initial part of that, initial part of that Premier League once again. Liverpool are showing a lot more. A lot more than what they did last season. Last season was a disaster for them, but just in the true Liverpool fashion, they seem to be back again second, just a point away from Man City as well. So, a team, a manager that you are pretty much used to competing with, they're back again. But you have to say that Man City are again having a very good Premier League season thus far.
I'd say yes and a no because so far it looks like we've been in smooth sailing waters. But if you look from what we did see them from the last season, the dominance of what you had early on, though Arsenal did take a lot of they took a big leap last season. It's not been the case. Right? A lot of teams have been on equal playing foot, and this is where the things can get slightly dangerous for Manchester City and for a lot of other teams as well. Because when you have 4 or 5 teams competing neck to neck with each other, it's far more competitive than a two-team race, right? Firstly, it's obvious, but at the same time, the pressure is so high because every game becomes so much important. So if 4 teams are on almost same points, then in that case, almost 4 games or 8 games becomes very much more important than 2 games which would have otherwise become important for you. So this is where this season is slightly different. I know it's just so early; it's just November, and by winter you would
Yeah.
see a different way in which things could possibly turn. Thankfully, there's no World Cup like last year because that really sucked out the momentum from a lot of teams, and that's where I think Arsenal really had to suffer. But this season, there's no World Cup, but still, the fact that December is where things get really turned around with a lot of fixtures, with 4 cups which you have to fight for. For a lot of teams, it's just 3 cups now. But even there, in the Champions League, then you have your Premier League games back to back to back. Then you have your FA Cup fixtures coming in. So that's where things can get slightly more nervy for a lot of teams. But so far, if you look at the balance of things, it looks very good when you talk from an upside side of the table.
Yeah, I mean, being a neutral that I've always been, because it's really tough supporting. I think in two different sports, two teams. But being a neutral, I think it's been a very interesting Premier League season because we've got Arsenal, we've got Liverpool, like you mentioned, Tottenham as well. Man City, I mean, pretty much expected Man City. But even teams like Aston Villa have put up a fight, haven't they, so
Yeah.
far? And you rightly mentioned that the kind of disruption is not going to be there. Players are not going to be playing a high-profile tournament like the World Cup in the middle of the
Yeah.
season. But let's look at this fixture for now, the marquee season for this weekend, that is Man City and Liverpool. Let's start with Liverpool, obviously, because I think that's where there were a lot of questions last year, the tiring midfield, with players. Now, a lot of players have left, right? This is a revamped midfield for sure. You've got Dominic Soboslai. You've got
Yeah.
a very different Darwin Nunez, who's somewhat, moving towards that expectation that you had from him. Now, obviously, I think comparing him to Haaland really was not
Yeah.
right, but you are seeing him making a space of his own, and I think this team
Yeah.
is now coming together, and that's obviously one of the reasons why they are just second to Man City. I mean, they've had thus far in 12 games. Thus far in 12 games, 8 wins, 3 draws, and just
Yeah,
one loss, which is, by the way, less than Man City as well. Just look in the Premier League when
yeah,
it comes to just the loss tally. But how would you rate them this season so far, coming into this match, because they are playing away from home and it's at the Etihad?
yeah. Yeah, funnily enough, it's not been a very comprehensive season for Liverpool, to be very fair. But at the same time, if you look at the kind of fixtures they've had, right? I mean, they've had some tough fixtures, they've had some injuries, they've had some unfortunate misses, especially Luis Diaz, his father's issue, that whole fiasco which took
Yeah,
place there. That was very unfortunate for them to lose him there at that point of the stage. And to add to that, the matches they've played so far. I mean, they've had one loss there in even Europa League to Toulouse. It was a 3-2 away loss. But other than that, the loss to Tottenham was very, controversial. You can say so. A lot of things did not go right. That red card was questioned.
yeah,
That goal was questioned. As to a lot of things were questioned in that game. So because so far, though it's not been so comprehensive at the same time, but at the same time they've gotten those results with this new team, and I think a lot has to be given to Klopp. The transition in the midfield has been brilliant. To have a Subuzlai or McAllister to play a number 6 role, and then you've got the goal scorers up front. And I think one of the biggest revelations in the season, especially to have a fit Luis Diaz, is a big up for them. And to add to that, a Jota who comes in and scores goals whenever you put him in the bench or when you start. Then Salah keeps doing what he does brilliantly. Salah has always been there and thereabouts. You can never discount him. But for me, the biggest revelation this season so far, I never thought Dominic Szoboszlai can come into a Liverpool setup and start doing what he did in Germany, because a lot of players did struggle. Now that's a very honest fact that I'm speaking about, because if you say except maybe for the Haaland, not a lot of players have come straight up from Germany and been able to do well like the way he's been able to do. And that's why I give credit to him. He's done a good job, especially off the ball movements have been top notch. I mean, we have to
yeah.
give him credit for that. He's done a brilliant work, and he fits right into that system. You can say so. Uh, I thought some of the games they've been slightly more worrisome. Score prediction, I'd go for a I'd go for a 1-0 City win. To be very honest, at this point.
I mean, you're asking a City fan for a score prediction, so obviously City is the one who's gonna come out on top, isn't it? But
I
I
think
mean,
it's
what do you
time
think
to
is
go.
going to be the biggest worry now this season, especially in this match? Because considering that they are going up against a team which has been very consistent in the Premier
Yeah,
League, I think consistency which is probably comparable to only Ferguson era of Manchester United. They
yeah.
have been that level of consistent in all competitions. So where do you think is the what do you think are the holes that this Liverpool team might be worried about, especially coming against a team which is as perfect as Man City?
Actually, defense is going to be a massive hole. If you look at that game, I remember going back to that game which they played against Chelsea, right? Manchester City was Chelsea. For me, it was the game of the season already. I don't think a lot of games can better that game. But for me, John Stones with City and without a John Stones City team is a big void. And I thought that was the case with Rodri. But even with Rodri in, I just felt a team when there is John Stones and when there's no John Stones, has two different narratives. And for me personally, speaking about which, I think we have to talk about it even more. I mean, John Stones has been one of the pivotal factors in this team, and without him, the midfield or even the ball carrying ability could be questioned for some of the players. And I don't think Akanji has done that job really well. I mean, he's done that CDM, the John Stones position so far okay, but cannot be his replacement. I think in that system, which Pep really puts out, you would need a player like John Stones who can really be going up front with the ball and also do do a sweeper set a sweeper defensive midfielder kind of a job who could give you that cover shadow ahead of your defense, drop into a four-man defender defense if need be, and transitions especially go up front with the ball. And I think that's been all good. I think one of the surprising factors, though Haaland has scored a lot of goals this season, he's not had that impact like what he's had last season, isn't it? And it's so hard to translate what he had last season into this season. And slightly what I feel is also that Man City team has looked very good, but defensively they've been shaky. I mean, that's one area they can exploit. With Salah, with Guardiola has been good in patches. He's not been the greatest. He's not been at his absolute best. So you can exploit these areas, especially on the flank, the right wing of the right hand side or left hand side for Man City. on the right hand side for Liverpool. I think that's where the matchup is going to be extremely good to watch, because how does Salah take on Aguardiola, or for that matter, how does Kyle Walker try to defend Luis Diaz? Because you saw that against Chelsea as well. Man City is a team who's got that, what is a swagger about them. They want to keep a high line, and they don't want to keep pushing
Yeah.
even when they got the lead, and that really got them exploited against a team like Chelsea. You saw that really turned the game around. Nicholas Jackson really ran past them. Raheem Sterling got an opportunity a couple of occasions there. So I personally felt that's one thing which they have to do a lot better. But other than that, for me, though I'd say De Bruyne not being there is a massive miss, but I think John Stones is bigger. I mean, today I hope it's slightly more different for them, because I hope they'd have learned. They've gone to the same lineup from what I can see, even for today's game. Not a lot of changes from what they had in that Chelsea game. But yeah, to be very honest, this is where they're going to be. They have to be extremely careful about how they're going to take on this challenge. Doku has done a decent job this season. They've got a Bernardo Silva and Julian Alvarez who's operating from the center of the park. Julian Alvarez has done a very good job to be a second striker at times and an attacking midfielder up front behind Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I mean, just before we move on to the other fixtures, what do you think of this debate between Grealish and Doku? Because there has been, I think Pep has already come out and said that Grealish will have to, or at least he's hinted at the fact that Grealish will have to, prove that he is first team worthy. And we know one thing about Pep Guardiola is he does not look at price tags. He looks at the quality, or rather, he looks at the role that he wants a
Yeah,
player to fulfill. Now, Jack
yeah,
Grealish has been an integral player for them in their treble run last time around. But just seems
yeah.
like he's lost favor with Pep and he has to fight back. Now, what is your personal opinion on this? Now, do you think a
For me,
Jeremy Doku
yeah,
deserves to start up here? I mean, he does, but do you reckon Grealish should get a little bit more opportunities than he's been getting, because he's still a big ticket player?
I think Doku brings in a lot more dynamism in comparison to what a Jack Grealish does. Okay, Jack Grealish is great in terms of holding the ball or winning those tactical fouls. Can take the ball wide,
Yeah,
can cut in interior if need be. Does a decent defensive job as well, which he did in the last season. With Jeremy Doku, he does a okay job off the ball, but more than the dynamism, right? You saw the game. I think it was against Bournemouth, 4 assists in a single game. He's extremely dynamic.
yeah,
He's a kind of player who can change the game in his own way if you put him on a pitch. And in a team like City, I was very confused at whether he's going to start. But once he got that confidence, he's unraveling himself as to what he can be and what he is. You saw that in the international fixtures recently as well. How good he was
yeah,
for Belgium. So I think he is slowly turning into that really good left winger which City wanted, a pacey one who can cut past defenders, who can bring a lot more dynamism up there. When you have a very quick winger who's good on the ball and also who can connect with the center of the park a lot more, I think then you're talking about a dangerous player. I think that's what this guy brings. The game is a lot more faster when he's on the pitch, I feel, in comparison to what Grealish was. You can slow down a game with Grealish, but if you want to really quicken things up, if you want to really be upbeat, I think then you can bring a German Doku. It's a tick for tack call, to be honest. You can go in with oppositions and you can take a call based on them or the kind of style of play you want to continue at certain, with the motion of play. If you want to slow the game down, manage the game a lot better, bring in Grealish. There's no harm in doing that. Uh, but if you want to really attack the opposition a lot more, be up front, maintain that high line, hit on counters if need be, carry the ball a lot more up front. I think that German Doku is a no-brainer for me because he's getting involved in goal contributions a lot with every game he's playing with City, and that's a crazy thing to be already. I mean, he's
yeah.
already Grealish's assist in a very short period of time that he has played.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to say for a young kid, he's really been a confident lad, hasn't he? Because, I mean, that's the one thing about Pep. You know that he is always going to bring youngsters up ahead. I mean, he did that at Barca. He's done that at, he did that at in Bundesliga as well as Bayern. So
Yeah,
he is that kind of a manager. You don't expect, Pep to let or be blindsided by big ticket or big expenses or salary. I mean, he's the same man who lost how Cancelo last season and still managed to go ahead and win a treble as if nothing had happened. So that is the one thing about Pep. But let's talk about a few other matches that we're going to be probably seeing today. I think probably another really
I think
important
it's
one in
just
terms of the
Spain
top of the table is going to
presentation.
be
We'll see how. things look like. Now we'll put a
Yeah.
screen presentation. So yeah, you can talk about it, meanwhile.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be having Brentford versus Arsenal today. I think that's another important one. It's way later tonight, 11 o'clock here, Indian time. Now, Arsenal will be keeping an eye on today's game because, they have an opportunity to probably just sneak ahead, especially if Man City end up not winning this match, or if there's a draw between the two teams, could just
Yeah,
sneak in ahead and, top the table. So they are playing Brentford, however, giant killers. And they've had a decent start again. They've played 12 matches and they've shared win, loss, and draw all amongst themselves. Four wins, four losses, draws.
yeah,
But on the other hand, Arsenal once again, I think a little bit of a hiccup.
yeah,
It's not been as smooth as last season, the start. But
yeah.
however, Mikel Arteta, you would still say, has a hold on this team that he has had in the past 3 seasons.
Yeah, I would say yes. He's got the hold of the team. Arsenal has done a very good job. Now let's look at this table also, right? What's the points separating the top four teams, or let's say top five teams? It's just 3 points separating the top five teams, and after 12 games,
Yeah.
it's not 5 games or 6 games.
And I
It is
mean, the
after
goal difference
12.
is also not very far.
Yes, exactly. I know it's still very early in the season, and this is where the real test start for a lot of teams. But I'd say it's been extremely competitive. As I mentioned, it's gotten off to a very competitive Premier League, but then it all depends now. This is where things start disintegrating for a lot of teams. The top teams take that lead here, and teams who are in minor leagues, or I wouldn't want to say minor leagues, teams who are mid-table or who destined to finish in Europa League positions always tend to fall off here. So this is the most integral
Yeah.
part of the season, I believe, because this is where quality and metal is proven, and this is where a team which is destined to possibly win a Premier League also falls off. Now, all of a sudden, you will feel like, okay, what did we do wrong? A lot of teams would have lead at this point in the stage, but they start to fall off. This international break right before winter is where things get really tricky because a lot of injuries take place in this international break. And as usual, a lot of injuries
Yeah.
did take place even in this international break, and it's been historic. I don't know why people don't understand it. uh, this has been happening every season. Like this international break, last year was World Cup. This year it's been just the international break. It always turns the table upside down after this international break. A lot of players get injured, then that the team combinations have to be changed. The good teams with the squad depth take the extra push. Then for the lower teams to then really catch up, then it's impossible. So for me, as you mentioned, Arsenal are in close quarters and they've had a phenomenal season so far. I mean, let's be honest, to repeat from where they left off in the last season, that's a big, big job. And to be consistent enough to do that, you have to give credit to Mikel Arteta, you have to give credit to the backroom staff for managing it, and the way in which they have played, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also have to say, what do you think of this competition that's been going on between David Raya and Ramsdale? I mean, it was a very it's something we not cover on the show obviously because we were
Yeah,
not really on focusing on football at initial time, but there is a debate that you should have one goalkeeper or having two goalkeepers not really a good thing, and we've seen this happen before as well, where
yeah.
you're just competing with each other, and sometimes it becomes a little bitter. Now, who would you prefer in this team? And secondly, would you really want two goalkeepers of equal pedigree in a Premier League squad or in any top flight football squad? To be
No,
frank,
I don't. I really don't. It's hard, especially to manage them. Because goalkeeper is only player who really gets that one sole position, and he'd get to keep that for entirety of the season. He's a guy who's possibly going to play the most number of matches for a single season, and he don't want to tamper with the goalkeeper much because he's someone who forms integral part of systems like Arsenal, Manchester City, or Liverpool, even for the matter Manchester United. A goalkeeper who can play the ball well. I think both David Raya and Ramsdale have really done well. So it's hard to really compare. For me, I think what Arteta prefers is the David Raya. There's also because of unfortunate circumstances that an injury came for Ramsdale at the wrong time. So David Raya took that position. If not, then Ramsdale would have possibly. But I think for Arteta, David Raya gives a lot more confidence with the ball. It's not like Ramsdale is very bad with the ball, but a slightly bit more. And that's one of the reasons why Arteta went for a David Raya as well. Now, Ramsdale is
yeah,
great when stopping, right? I mean, he's been phenomenal for Arsenal last season. But even there in a build-up play, which Ramsdale brings and David Raya brings, I feel David Raya's distribution is slightly more superior in comparison to a Ramsdale, and someone like Arteta has really given that serious concentration, a distributive keeper who's good when it comes to his ball progression, starting the play, build up play from the back. I think that's what has really made him look into David Raya a slight bit more in comparison to what Ramsdale. And I think that really comes down to the very fact that a Spanish connection was also there. Let's be honest, Arteta always has preferred a player who can really bring in that uh, extra bit of progressive ability into this team. And I think what what now Arteta might also consider is to play Kai Havertz as left back because he's been doing that for Germany, and not a bad option
Yeah.
to be very honest. But I don't think that'll happen with Zinchenko there in this Arsenal team. But not a bad option if at all he wants to try that out. But at this point, for me, David Raya is 51 ahead, and Ramsey is 49. Unless something drastically goes wrong in this next few matches, I see David Raya starting again today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be an important match as well because Brentford is not an easy team to beat, especially if you're in the big six, because they have challenged time and time again with that, that strategy of long ball. I mean, call it what you may, but long balls up ahead. I know they're going to miss, the likes of. I mean, they are going to miss some of the players, but you would have to say that this team is a team that can beat you on their day. Let me just going over a few more matches that you have today. I think another very interesting one is going to be Newcastle and Chelsea, isn't it? I mean, it is another one which you could really call close to the marquee contest today. Probably the second most impactful one because Newcastle as well have really risen after that takeover, especially last season. You saw them being one of those teams that challenge, but they haven't gotten off the kind of start they did last season, haven't they? Able last season, it was a lot more. They almost challenged the top four, and I think this time around, you also have to say that that added burden of playing in the Champions League has slightly slowed them down. They're playing in the group of death, as it is called. It is a tough group to manage, but you'd have to say they haven't started off well. Chelsea, on the other hand, are showing a little bit more of the same as last time. I think they're equal on points with Brentford. Who would have thought 5 years ago that was the case? But you would say recent results, especially the last one against Manchester City, will bring a lot more confidence from that in that Pochettino's camp, and will make them feel that today they are going to be on their game.
Yeah, I think so. Talking about Newcastle to start off with, I think one area where Newcastle has really fallen off is losing someone like a Tonali is such a big effect on this team. I mean, he was. I know there's
Yeah.
Gomez, there is a lot of good players in that team, but that also got into the camp a little bit. And I think for me, a test of a manager is always in the second season in comparison to what he could do in the first season. Now, for me, I thought this is where the season where he was going to be tested, the manager, and for me, 9 out of 10 times, if he was going to be tested in all three fronts, which is like a Premier League, an FA Cup, and also a Champions League, can he survive all of them and really put up a performance, which is always going to be a question mark. And Eddie Howe, though he is a good manager, I think he's not a manager who can really win you titles, to be very honest. He can come close to titles, but he's not a
Hmm.
manager who's going to come in and win you titles every season. Now, that is a decision which Newcastle will have to make rather sooner than later. He's a phenomenal manager, but I don't see him as a manager for this club in the long run. And for him to manage the resources which he's gotten and to really do a job with it in all fronts, it's not going to be easy. Now, for them to finish top four this season is going to be hard, obviously, because of various
Yeah.
reasons. Number one, to start out with, the competition up
I think.
front, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the competition up
I
front
mean,
is
I
hard
think
for
this
them.
time around, every season. Yeah, I mean, every season, every team that is at attentive top four or even the title really buys that one player that they bank their hopes on in important matches, and that was Sandro Tonali for Newcastle. Now, him not being there is really going to be a huge factor, right? Considering that other teams, as you've rightly mentioned or are going to mention, are have also improved, and their players haven't been affected by a similar ban.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't really affect the team when a single player gets banned. You'll just count that as an injury rather than thinking about ban being a factor. But here, the issue with this team is also that they have to compete in multiple competitions and keep the squad depth.
Yeah,
Now, that's immensely hard if you look at the way in which how things have really gone for this team. Uh, Squad depth is something which we did speak about time and time again. When we talk about squad depth being a factor, firstly and foremost, we need to understand Newcastle has got a good squad, but do they have a squad to really compete in all the fronts? Like, can they compete in Premier League in a week, then go back in Champions League? They have a great starting 14 or 15, but they don't have a 20-25 player squad who can give a great Cup, EFL Cup, and come in every week and to do it. So that is what I'm trying to talk about here. Sometimes you will have to take those extra bit of risk in terms of risking some of your players for this bigger competition like Champions League, because you're in Champions League what after 2 decades, close to 2 decades, and you'd want to keep doing that every time. To be very honest, how you want to compete at the same time, not let go of a Premier League, which is something which you want to keep being very consistent on. And I
Yeah.
think that Newcastle have been consistent enough to. Uh, Last season, they were very consistent enough to make it top four. You can't make it in top four just by playing okayish football. And this season, I think they've taken their game to another level in terms of their play style, but it's not transforming into results. I thought a result against PSG in the Champions League was massive for a team like this, but couldn't translate into
Oh
Premier
yeah.
League. So, as you mentioned, it's a squad depth factor and multiple competitions and multiple fronts and player forms. A lot of things come into question because fatigue kicks in at some point, and you have to rotate the squad. And management is the most important thing. So identify which competition is important for you. Identify which competitions which you'll have to really put in a lot more focus and
I mean,
go
I
all
have a
guns blazing.
question here, right? I mean, let me know what you think about this. Now, with Newcastle, you obviously know that they're not going to win the Champions League. Might make it to the second round, obviously. That is probably their goal as well. But now my question here is, able as a manager, you know that I mean, for a club of the size of Newcastle, there's also another factor that you are looking at the prize money as well that you get from this tournament, because that's how you improve your next team, your squad in the next transfer window. And we know every round that they qualify, they get a certain prize money in the Champions League. But and you also get a certain amount of money that you get when you qualify top four of the Premier League. Now, would you rather attempt to qualify the top four of the Premier League and maybe sacrifice Champions League because you're not a club that is obviously destined or considered going to be able to win, but make sure that you have an appearance next Champions League, or would you really go all out in the Champions League? Or maybe look at Champions League as a more important one than Premier League because you're not going to win the Premier League.
Yeah, good question. I mean, to start off with, I think if I was a manager, I would want to really compete in Premier League again, and I think
Considering
that's
your
more real.
FIFA
Yeah,
24,
but you never
23
know. In a
experience,
knockout
what would you
competition, you
do?
have a lot more chances as well, given the fact that how you be,
True.
how
Yeah.
you can get the results to go in your way. And to be honest, it's not like a Newcastle who's struggling to get money, right? I mean, this is Newcastle who's got really good funding coming from Saudi Arabia, and they've got the funds behind them to really compete in a lot of competition, and there is a lot of pressure as well. Now, you've spent a lot of money in this transfer window. You've gotten the players. I mean, they've not really gone berserk in terms of buying players, but they've certainly gotten players who you wanted in that squad. So when you have been provided with a team like this, the most important thing as a manager, what you can do is to be competitive in whichever competition you're playing, because you're gonna be analyzed, or you're gonna be evaluated based on what you're gonna give in. You can't Eddie Howe is gonna be questioned by the ownership group. Like, what did you even do in the Champions League if you're not playing for the win? And that could lead to him being sacked. So as a manager, why would I take the risk of being sacked at any point of stage and rather compete? And as a new ownership group, you'd want to really take it to the next level in terms of how you want to play, and you want to show the world that this team is capable of doing it to compete in all fronts. And this is your first opportunity to do that. So if you have to become a big club to regain glory, you have to compete in all fronts. You can't really say we're a small club
Yeah.
anymore because we've got the financial backing to be a big club now. So you'll have to really push further ahead.
Yeah, well, let's take some questions. I think Sanjay is asking, good. Where do you think Kerala Blasters would rank in the Premier League? I think they won't be in the Premier League. I know you're a fan, Sanju, but let's be frank. Yeah, let's be a little realistic. I think Premier League is still high. It is still top flight football. I think we've done this co-prediction part. 1-0 to Man City is what you're saying, Abel.
Yeah, in my opinion, City have
Sanju
won.
says, in my opinion, Man City is gonna be 350 plus for no loss. Oh my! I mean, I don't know if Liverpool is gonna let that easy. Unai Emery, I think that's a very good. I think that's something I want to cover. Yeah, Aston Villa, who were close to being relegated the season that Unai Emery came over,
Yeah.
has now I mean, I know it's still early days. I know it's just 12 matches, but they have done better than Man United, Newcastle, Chelsea, and I mean, you would have to say Everton now. I mean, I know Everton's not a big team anymore, but these are the lads that have got history in the Premier League. They are very close to Tottenham as well. And I think
Yeah,
they're playing Tottenham today, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, they're playing Tottenham as well. Now, Tottenham is also a very interesting case study. A very defensive team last time around. Their defending was mostly around trying to defend the manager's remarks. It wasn't. They had a very decent season. You do have to say they did a very decent job last season. It was not a trophy season, but I think the expectations from Antonio Conte was maybe even Antonio Conte's expectation from himself were not fulfilled. But Ange Postecoglou, coming all the way from Australia, has just lit up this tournament. And we've spoken about this before as well, Abel. We always felt that Tottenham has the squad to play an aggressive, attacking, beautiful football. And Postecoglou has just done that. I think he's harnessed this attacking prowess of his team, right? He's converted everyone into an attacking team. And he's gone out to say that it
yeah.
doesn't matter if you're 10-9 or even 7, we're gonna go after goals, and that's what this team has done. They're coming up against an Aston Villa team where you have to say Unai Emery is a master at mid-table teams. His work with Villarreal was just phenomenal. The work that he did there. Aston Villa, very similar club, you would have to say, in terms of stature in the Premier League, and he's doing
Yeah.
very much the same. He's repeating the same that he's done in the past with other mid-table teams. Now this is gonna be a pragmatic manager was an aggressive manager, isn't it? And that's what's
I
going to
don't
be
think
exciting
so.
about
You
this one.
can bring that as a pragmatism for the Aston Villa team anymore. If you look, they've scored more goals than Tottenham this
Yeah,
season, the Aston Villa team. So I
they
think
have.
both are playing very aggressive
Yeah,
brand of
I'm
football. And
surprised. I did
Aston
not
Villa
know that.
is going to be tick for tack. Aston Villa scored 29 goals for that matter, and uh, Tottenham has
Yeah,
scored 24, and conceding as well. It's almost 15-7. So to be very honest, this is where Aston Villa is considered a lot more in comparison to what Tottenham has.
yeah,
So I just 2 goals different. So you can't say this team is aggressive, that team isn't. So it's gonna be very interesting clash, and I think they played as good as the Tottenham team in the season because the Tottenham started performing well. A lot of eyeballs went there, but for me, they are in the top four contention as much as a Tottenham team. They're about fifth with 1 point difference from Tottenham. And if they win today and if some results go the other way around, they'll be in top two rather. So that's how close we are to be talking about the Aston Villa team. And they've done a beautiful job so far under Unai Emery. And so far, so good for them. I mean, what more do you want? They've competed even in they've been doing a decent job even in the Conference League this season. They've not done anything wrong. They've gotten results even there. And first and foremost, the most important thing we want to talk about in the way in which they defeated teams like Brighton, right? They went all out against Brighton, defeated them, took them apart 6-1 there. That was a beautiful win. For me, I thought that really sent tremors in the Premier League saying, okay, if they can defeat a Brighton that way, we should be careful. They went on to defeat West Ham 4-1 right after that. So they really took oppositions apart and they got a win against Chelsea. So they've done a lot of things right. I think they've had few losses. That was Liverpool 3-0, then Everton, which was quite surprising
yeah,
for me in the EFL Cup. I mean, that doesn't really matter. So, for me, as a team, they've lost to the big teams. Obviously, they've lost to Arsenal, they've lost to City, they've lost to Liverpool. But for them, how they manage the other teams, that's been very good. And sometimes that's good enough to make you into the top four. And I think the
yeah,
next part of the
yeah,
season, uh, it's going to be very interesting as to how they're going to continue doing this. As I mentioned, all this half of the season is going to get very exciting. After December, after January, where things, the pressure, everything is going to slightly change. The weather is going to be harder on players. A lot of these things, recovery is not going to be easier. So this is where things are going to be huge for a lot of these clubs. And for me, this is where Aston Villa will be tested and Unai Emery will be tested. Similarly for Tottenham as well. I mean, Tottenham has done a decent job in terms of playing that brand of football, and it's really caught in all of our eyeballs in terms of the way in which the Tottenham is known for and how they played under Conte and Jose Mourinho, and the way they have played without a Harry Kane this season so far has been outstanding. I mean, no doubts about it. They've taken their chances. It has paid off for them.
yeah,
But as I mentioned always, for me, a Tottenham will be doing a lot better without a lot of expectation. That's what they've been doing. And you should give them their time. I mean, it's just not this season. I think A 2 3 season run will not be a bad thing to judge where this manager stands for Tottenham or what is going to be Tottenham's future.
Absolutely. I think it is going to be an exciting tenure for sure. Let's hope it lasts a lot longer than some of the other Tottenham managers, isn't it? Let's look at some of the other ones. I prefer Dhoni to be the keeper. Yeah, I think I agree. It's time for Dhoni to come out of retirement and be the keeper for Indian football team. And he can score free kicks as well. If you guys have watched that, celebrity football one for the charity, he can score free kicks. So, yeah, what do you think, Abel? I think we have to talk
Yeah,
about Dhoni, whatever we do, yeah? Cricket or football.
not a bad option. Whichever team he wants to play, he can choose, and he can be a good
But
keeper.
Gurpreet Singh Sandhu will have a say on this. That's for sure.
Why though? Why
Why would
Gurpreet?
you want? I mean, Gurpreet Singh Sandhu's done a good job. I watched him
Only
play.
in Premier League. Is
But
it
yeah, I
supposed
think
to play in Premier League?
I mean, if someone would, I think Manchester City will probably come. I mean, not City, United will definitely go for him. Yeah, better than
Yeah,
Onana. But do you think he'll get number
at
seven,
this
Dhoni,
point.
and Manchester United?
Yeah, yeah. I think finally they can have a good number seven, but just in the form of a
Who's the
keeper.
number seven right now? Is it Anthony? Is it Anthony? Yeah.
Mount.
Oh, Mount. Yeah. Yeah, I think Mount will be more than happy to give it to Dhoni.
Yeah, Mount is pretty.
Kapil says, this is the reason why football doesn't grow in India. Talks on football, listen to people are live, and talk on cricket. Even unknown will come live. Yeah, I think. I don't know. There's a little bit of a shade on us as well. I think just two people here to watch us, but we're happy that you guys are here. I think it's fine. It's just us talking to two people. It's like us talking with our friends. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I think it's also because we're such a cricket crazy nation. 1983 is what really shifted us towards cricket. It could have been football if we had the funds to go and play the World Cup and we were invited. That four-team World Cup, India was invited.
yeah,
India could have been in the semis of the World Cup, football World Cup, but India didn't have the funds. I know there are there's this myth that Indian footballers did not have shoes. That's not the thing, guys. It was just that AIFF or whatever AIFF was back then just did not have the amount of money to send I think 15, 16 players all the way over to the other side of the world at a time where airplane was just discovered. So, it was that kind of a time for us as a country. But yeah, I mean, our football has really grown. And I think I'll be very frank, and I think you'll agree with me Abel, on this. Indian football is going leaps and bounds, isn't it? Just talk about how India
yeah.
football has been doing in the World Cup qualifiers. I think any football talk show will not be enough if we don't talk about our country, because even though we've gotten grief on the cricket side, slowly and silently our football side has been doing really well.
They're doing okay. I mean, not so great, but yeah, they're doing okay right
Oh,
now. I
come
think
on, be a little bit more
they're
excited.
doing okay. I mean, there's just they've been very impressive. Igor Stimac has done a great job so far. I mean, he's really
Yeah,
tried to make this team is a very confident team compared to the teams we've
yeah,
had in the past. And I think we can judge maybe at the end of this round two qualifiers as to what we have done. I mean, there's an opportunity for it to go to round three for the first time in your history. So if they make it, it's massive. So far, I'd say they're doing okay. Let's just back the boys, support them as much as they can, as much as we can, and as
yeah.
much support they deserve. And we'd possibly see some good results. So let's just not jump the gun and say we'll qualify for World Cup right now. But yeah,
I think
let's
that's too
just
far.
but
I
we're
think
doing okay.
we are also at a stage where you should just enjoy the results as they come and just support our boys.
Yeah, and they maintained a high line versus Kuwait and Qatar. Yeah, they did, and that was good to see. To be very honest,
Yeah,
and I think that's why I said they're doing okay right now. But as I mentioned, you'll only be tested once you go
long
to
way to go.
round three, where you're in Japan. AFC Asia Cup is the biggest one in Qatar in a couple of months' time. So let's see how they play in these tournaments and see where we judge them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it from us from today. Then we've covered the Premier League thoroughly, all the matches that's going to happen today, and it's nice to have us both come back and talk about football. It's been a while, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
before we leave you with the fact that Boomer 11 is still out there. It's a free service, and you can build your fantasy teams on football and cricket as well. There is a match coming up tomorrow in cricket and football. The action keeps going on all year round. So make sure you make your team, and why not, guys? It's free. Go out there, experiment, and have fun. And there's also the predictor feature. And well, Sanjay, you asked able to predict the score. you can do it too, and maybe you might be better than Abel when it comes to predicting the score. I mean, you did say 350 plus. I would just suggest you be a little bit more realistic, but who knows? You could be a lucky winner.
Absolutely. Good night, good evening, and good night, guys, and see you all tomorrow for the India game.